This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
Welcome, community. Today we had the opportunity to talk to Adrienne Guerrero, co-founder of Leadership Beyond. She's going to talk about her experience recently giving her first ever TEDx talk on the power of the pause. And we'll explore the framework and some practical applications for the tool. What struck me in this conversation is the intricate dance between action and reflection. It can never be either or, but probably not both at the same time. And time isn't always chronological. It's just discerning when it's time to pull over. But I'll let the conversation do the talking. Adrienne, congratulations on your first TED Talk. And
Thank you.
please address what that experience was like, even the fears and the doubts and all of that. And then let's have a discussion about how some of this will apply to our community.
Yeah, so I never really expected to do a TED Talk. I've always enjoyed listening to them, watching them, and never really gave it any thought that I would want to even do one. And in 2024, thinking about 2025, I decided to make the strategic decision to do more speaking events. And then the proposal for this TED Talk came through. And so it felt a little bit like the universe calling to me, and I could not answer. And the first thing that came to me of like, well, what would I talk about? Was the thing that we have had in our community since very early days, which was the power of the pause. It later evolved as I worked on the TED Talk into an actual framework, but the pause concept has been here with us all along, and we've applied it and we've talked about it on multiple podcasts with guests, but it's always been here. And so that's what I talked about. And it is an experience like no other for me anyway, because a TED Talk is no notes. And I'm used to having, webinars and workshops or presentations where you have your notes, and this time no notes. So thanks to you, Tom, I was able to learn some new techniques to kind of harness that and go from there. But it was quite an experience. Good one, but an experience.
Well, a couple things come to mind as I hear that. One, thank you for thanking me, but one of the leadership qualities you demonstrated is you did it, but you didn't do it alone. And you
Yes.
asked, and I'm reminded of our strategic networking guide, is you asked, well, who can help me with this? And
Yeah.
it reminds you that you are part of a team of people working together, sometimes very informally, sometimes formally, to say, we want success and we want your best. So our motto here to any leaders, you can do it, and probably not alone. And if you could do it alone, it wouldn't be as much fun anyway.
Yeah, you're right. That I think was maybe the second question I had was, who do I have in my world who would be willing to help me and has the expertise to help me, or at least the interest and the partnership to help me? That was question two. First was, well, what do I talk about? And the second was, who can help me? And then, and yes, you're right. And I'm so grateful. I think that was the second most profound emotion throughout the process was gratitude of how many people gave of their time and their talent to help me prepare, from writing the script to rehearsing the script to, capturing some of the goofy things I do that might be distracting, to just listening to me say it over and over and over again.
Yeah, the community of conversation in action to
Yeah.
support you bringing this important message
Yeah. It
to
would
the
have been
world.
horrible by myself.
Yeah, and so the purpose of this conversation is to explore ways that people listening can employ the concept in their leadership struggles. And you also pointed to something before we dive deeper into that I want to mention. That's how we came together. The quality of the questions we ask will determine where we go next. And you and I wanted to work together, but we couldn't do this, which was this big initiative. And so we said, what can we do? Resourceful questions is the key. We can make a list of what we can't do and why. Don't have the resources, don't have the time, don't have the money. But what can we do right where we are with the resources we have? And so we came to a Lunch and Learn, which became a blog, which became a podcast, and became a community that we're here today. So, in a sense, the pause was just not listing all the things we can't do and why, but stepping back and saying, we want to work together. You didn't know day to day if your kids would be in school or not be in school. So the list narrowed. What can we do to confirm that we want to work together? And if you ask that kind of question, you will get answers. And we did something that was low risk and fun and meaningful for a small number of people, and then expanded from there. So my question is, what is the power of pause and why should we care about it? You don't get to give the whole TED
I
talk.
won't give the whole talk, right?
Like, we'll get our community a link
almost
to it
40
when it's
years
ready,
ago. No.
Yeah, you're ready to go. You got it memorized. I'll just shut up and let you go.
I think it's still there.
Yeah, what is it and why do we care about it today?
I think for me, the point of the pause framework is a simple way to remember when you're in the midst of some kind of flurry of activity, flurry of changes, flurry of emotions. The P stands for pullover. And I think that is the biggest and most important and the hardest step, is to find your pullover. And what I mean by that is it could mean lots of different things for people, right? You have to find your own technique. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's breathing, maybe it's movement, maybe it's running, whatever it is, maybe it's music. It's something that forces your brain to just calm a little bit. And we can think so much more clearly when we give ourselves that moment or 2 or 10 or days or a year and a half, right? We don't know how long it takes, but it's different for different situations. But the significance is our world is moving so fast, and especially for our leaders, that we are not remembering to just pull over, slow down, find a breath, and think more clearly.
And I would like to add to that something from my work in momentum coaching and from our conversations that will make the pullover effective. So what's clear from your description is we have this thing running riot and it needs to be broken. It needs to be stopped. And we need to pull over. Well explained. And then I would just add, when we do this, let's be clear to set an intention. Because in that moment, we know what we want to stop. And so it could lead to just escape, which wouldn't be good for our leadership. And sometimes that's necessary too. I remember when my first daughter was born and I thought I was being helpful. I said, we need some milk. Oh, I'll go get it. And Jill said, no, she just needs to get out of the house. I had to learn that. And that's right in some places, but we're really talking about strategic pauses.
Yeah.
And so we need to set a new intention. We need to cut the frequency of what's running away and running riot, and then set a new intention, something we can do in the breathing or the meditation. So we're clear of what we want. Because what we don't want is so loud, we don't need to just amplify and make a new list of all the ways our clients are driving us crazy or whatever it is.
Yeah, they know that already.
Mhm.
The other thing that comes to mind when you mentioned your momentum coaching is your the step on start small.
Yeah. So to remind those who don't know is when you set your intention, we want to think big, even bigger. And leaders want to think big, change the whole world. But the part that's often missing, especially someone like me that's an abstract, I work well in the world of ideal, but when it comes to gravity and friction, not so much. Start small, even smaller. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the question I asked before. What can we do right where we are with what we have? And we came up
Right.
with we could do a lunch and learn. That was something you could manage in your schedule. So what can we do? And start there. Keep thinking big. Don't end there, but start small. And then something that might seem it's a paradox, but it's aligned with the framework that you provide for us, which is keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
And keep
Mm-hmm.
moving may include moving so slowly that you're sitting by the side of the road for an hour. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay, but you're still moving because you're anchoring to an intention and
Yeah.
you're considering steps that move in that direction rather than reacting, which moves you in
Yes.
whatever direction. So they're
Yes.
very well aligned. Keep moving does not have anything to do with the pace that we're moving, but it does have to do with the direction. And the direction is toward the thing that we're intending to bring.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's personal, it's toward becoming who we intend to become. And so we look and we say, well, this isn't how I want to be. However, your conversations were with your stakeholders on that awful day. This isn't how I want to show up. So
Right.
you got to discontinue that pattern. And then you ask, well, how do I want to show up? And then the rest of your framework will help you to determine that.
Mm-hmm.
So continue with it.
Okay. So the A is for assess. And I like to ask two questions to assess the situation. What is true and what needs to be true? And as you're answering those, make sure that you are not filling in blanks with assumptions
Is that
because we're really good at that. And it's
yes, we are. Only
very hard to
100% of
make
us
sure. Yeah.
are good at that. And what you're reminding me in the momentum process, we call it truth statements.
Yep.
And truth statements are true about you, regardless of the evidence. Well, what do we
Mm-hmm.
mean by the evidence? Well, the evidence is what's showing up in the moment. So we can take your mother. You are a good mother, and that's just true. You love your kids and you take care of them. But we could find a moment where if we looked at the evidence, we may not make that conclusion. So if you're practicing what you're teaching, those moments still show up, but they shorten in time because
Mm-hmm.
you pause and you go, this isn't how I want to behave. It
Right.
doesn't say anything about who you are as a mother and about your love, but you just say, this behavior is not my best. What can I do? And then you'll come up with how to get back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Saint Augustine said it this way: "See who you are doesn't need any evidence. Good mother,
Yeah.
and become what you see. And become is
Mm.
not a straight
Mm.
line.
I like that. Yeah, the first two steps are really about grounding to your values. Mm-hmm.
And intention, and the
And
difference between the
intention.
two
Yeah.
is values is what you care about, and intention is how you plan to demonstrate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What comes next? This
So
is
then
fun.
the the U is for U-turn, which is a little bit of a play on words on purpose because it really means uncovering what options you have. So, if you've taken the first two steps, you're already kind of grounded, you've got the intention, you're anchored to your values, and now you're in a space where you can think about what are the possible options for addressing this thing, right? If you don't take care of the first two, those options are either not available to you because you can't think them up, or you're just not seeing them, right? It's impossible for you to see them because you're like tunnel vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's expanding possibilities.
Yeah.
And then what comes up for me, and maybe it comes in the next step, but it starts to happen here, is what am I willing to do about it? Because some of the
Yes.
possibilities are good, but you're not willing.
Yes.
And sometimes it's I'm willing, but I'm not ready. And then you ask, is there a smaller step that I can take to
Mm-hmm.
build this willingness?
Mm-hmm. It's a consideration of the impact of those steps. Like some of those options might be an option, but not a good option.
But you want it on the list. That's the
But you
power
want it
of
on the list,
brainstorming.
right?
And
Right.
and then you start to discern and say, what am I
Yeah.
willing to do? And if you use the true statement we had before, is what's the next step? And
Yep.
that's the one that can be really small.
Yes. And that's what S stands for, is start.
Mhm.
And no matter how small. And I think I got that from when the writing was being done. I'm certain that came from some discussion you and I had,
Well,
right?
it comes
Start
from
no matter
us
how
and
small.
our guest, Brian Sykes, said,
Yeah.
start before you're ready.
Yep.
And he didn't originate it, but that's where I got it. He would tell you the
Mm-hmm.
source. I don't know his source. Start before you're ready, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what we will never know how many books aren't written and businesses aren't started and TED Talks that aren't happening because they never said yes to an email. And then they
Right.
watch a TED Talk and say, I could do better than that. And you say, you probably could. But I always say that's why I don't like the unlimited potential, because I go to the jewel store and they say that'll be $49.50. And I say, well, I've been told that I have unlimited potential. And they go, well, that'll be $49.50. So it's not that it's meaningless, but you got to start digging. And that's what
Yeah.
Diamond Mind is about. It's about
Yeah.
digging toward those shiny gems that look like coal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we did start. Then the next step is E, evaluate. So it's a reflection point again. Okay. So what's next? Because your start should have been nice and small, right? So, okay, maybe that was enough, and whatever it is you're working through has gotten resolved, or maybe you need to go back and consider your options. Maybe you need to go back and re-ask what is true now, what needs to be true. Maybe those are new answers, and then you can keep going through. It's kind of a
It,
fluid
it's a
process, right?
process.
Yeah.
And that's what I say about momentum too. It's the
Yeah.
momentum process. The content changes
Mm-hmm.
and it isn't steps. That's why I call it four dimensions to it. And the compass, true north
Yeah.
is always your intention. So true north stays relatively, specifically on values, stable over time. That's why
Mm-hmm.
principles
Mm-hmm.
work. But the application is an ever moving thing,
Right.
and you have to always say, where am I and where am I going? And that's
Mm-hmm.
a process, not an event.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can learn to make it more of a habit, which is what both of us are working on in teaching,
Yeah.
is the
It's a
habit.
practice. Yeah.
A practice is a really, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
convinced that leadership is a practice, because you can get any good leadership book and cognitively assent immediately.
Yeah. Really hard to apply. Even harder to apply consistently.
Very, yes. And that's why I need you and people in my network, because the people that can
Yeah.
both give me a kick and a hug at the same time
We
and
need
say, well,
accountability. We need
because,
support, right?
yeah,
Yes.
because Slippery
That's
Tom just
being
doesn't get
human.
that.
Mm-hmm.
My default is to make a list of what I can't do and all the reasons I can't do it. And even though I
Mhm.
say, well, what can you do right where you are with what you have? I got to practice that because that's not my first default. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah.
And then I'm done.
So I know you and I both have had conversations with leaders where this has been immediately resonant with them. Like
Yeah.
we're finding that this has become really a challenge for what you call CEO think time, but a challenge to we can set aside time on our calendar, but often we won't honor that, right? Because somebody's come to the door, we've pulled some fire, something, and so we just ignore that block of project time, think time, whatever time.
Whatever it is. So the
Yeah.
dis-ease, using that word the way it sounds, what we're not at ease with, is, and it's in every one of our intros, and nobody needs a lot of talk about it, this accelerated pace.
Mm-hmm.
Something's got to give. And
Mm-hmm.
what gives is strategy. And it
Yes.
isn't a choice, strategy or tactics. It
Yes.
is a false choice. The question is, how are we going to adapt to the reality of this crazy pace? And the answer has to be some sort of personal strategy, professional strategy, team strategy. And we like to simplify that on what are we counting on to win?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and we lose
Yeah,
sight of our win when
we
we're just
do.
trying to play whack-a-mole. When we're not really trying to play whack-a-mole. That's the reality of what we're doing. And so I hear it
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
CEO
Mm-hmm.
think time that you mentioned is a form of pause. And it's to set
Yeah.
time on the calendar to remember where you're going, to evaluate the choices, to make I could go through the whole model, but it starts with the pause and being deliberate. And
Yeah.
we're tight on time, but I want to just, yeah, we are tight on time. Time flies very quickly. I think
Well, I
we,
wanted to make one comment though, because
yeah, please do.
what you were explaining, it reminded me of a podcast that I just recently listened to. And the host was talking about, I can't recall which podcast, I listened to a lot of them, but the host was talking about some research that was done where we are wired for progress. So it's like, it's not even all of this fast pace of the world, the external fast pace coming at us, which it does. You're too many inputs, too fast if we don't intentionally quiet those down. But also, our wiring is like we are naturally rewarded. We feel good when we feel like we're making progress. Check the box, check the box, check the box. Strategy work is slower progress because you're thinking, right? So perhaps we need to find ways to break down the strategy work so that we feel like there's progress within strategy efforts, so we can
Yeah.
almost trick our brains, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like hurry up and get through it so that we can do the thing, we can get the email out, we can advertise, we can whatever the thing is, right? We can launch.
Yeah, so that's powerful, Adrienne. And if we remember our definition of strategy, what are you counting on to win? It changes what progress is.
Yeah.
Checking a box is movement. It's not necessarily achievement. And if
Yes.
I were to ask you what you'd like to achieve in your life, if we were just having a cup of coffee, it wouldn't be the number of check marks on a page. It
For
would
sure
have to
not.
do with family and with
Mm-hmm.
friends and with finances
Mm-hmm.
and with impact in the world.
Right.
And
We all want to
so
leave our
to
stamp.
accomplish that, you do need to check things. But what if you could reduce the number of boxes that came up reactively? Oh, I got to do this. I got to do
Yeah.
this. I got to do this. And you step back and say, will that really be progress? And so if you use the philosophical term, we are wired as teleological beings, which means beginning with the end in mind. And the end is rarely just a sequence of checkboxes. Not that we don't need those, but it is really, who do we want to become?
Yeah.
And that needs slowing down. And you're still
Yes.
going to have to deal with the check marks. But I just think that that's so powerful is that it's an adrenaline rush. There's people that are proud of how busy
Yeah,
they
right.
are.
Right.
But movement and achievement can't be balanced until we ask what's most important.
That's right. That is what we need. A pullover, a pause. My daughter calls it a stop word.
Yeah.
Like,
So
what is your stop word? What's the
whole
thing?
family working on the power of the pause.
Yeah.
That's wonderful because they heard you rehearse it.
Teach them young, right? Maybe they'll remember.
Well, we're just excited to have this conversation and welcome people to talk about their experience of slowing down in order to speed up, and look forward.
And their struggle with it.
And their struggle with it.
Because we all struggle with it.
We do. And where you are with your practice, and we are committed to bringing some tools to make it easier for you to do it. Not easy, just a little easier. And we're in it together.
Yes, always.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.